Hey, what's up, guys? I want to welcome you guys to the 2021 Texas Soccer Summit presented by Striker Texas. This panel is brought to you by Gloria. Gloria is a new app where football fans and players can look at content and share content, interact with each other. On Gloria, you'll be able to talk about your favorite players, teams, and topics. Easily find awesome football content to watch and share your skills and passion for the game from anywhere in the entire world. Gloria will be your home of football online, launching late 2021. So I want to welcome all you guys here once again. My name is Laura Gomez, and I am part of the Striker Texas, and I cover the Houston Dash, which makes this discussion way much closer to home. Should women that play soccer treat it as a hobby or take it to the next step and become professionals in the game? So with me, I have an incredible panel, and I want, to welcome you guys too. And I want you guys to introduce yourselves to our viewers. Satara, you want to start off just introducing yourself?
Yeah. Sorry, that was kind of awkward, wasn't it? Hey, everyone. My name is Satara Murray, and I am currently a defender for FC Austin Elite.
Awesome. Bri?
Yeah, I'm Bri Visalli. Obviously, I'm in a Houston Dash midfielder this last season, and hello.
Cami, you want to?
Hi, I'm Cami. Honestly, I don't really have a position, but I play all positions.
Okay. Danny?
And I'm Danny Woodfill. I am the general manager for FC Austin Elite.
Okay, so kind of to loosen each other up and kind of know each other within ourselves and for our viewers, I kind of want to get to know a little bit more of your background for the viewers to know who you are, what you're doing, what you're up to. So the question that I guess everybody wants to know is, how did you get started in soccer and decided to take it to a professional level? We can start off, whoever wants to start talking first. Don't beat me to it. So
All right. So
I
I
can
started
go
playing
first.
soccer when I was
Oh, so
five.
Tara, you want to go first?
Oh, no, sorry. Yeah. So I started playing soccer when I was five, and I didn't really know how far it was going to take me in life. I mean, you just kind of start playing with the desire just to have fun with it, and that's what I did. And to be quite honest with you, I went to school at the University of North Carolina. Hashtag Go Heels. And I didn't really have much of like an ambition to play professionally because the NWSL was only around for about 3 years by the time I graduated from school. So there really wasn't like this huge desire to go professional. I just wanted to go to school, graduate, and just kind of move on with my life. But then I actually got the opportunity to play overseas and play in England for Liverpool Football Club. So when that opportunity presents itself, it's like not something that you can just pass up. Not a lot of kids from Austin, Texas, make it over to Liverpool, England, and play for one of the biggest clubs in the world. So when that opportunity presented itself, it was like, all right, I'm doing it. And then the rest is pretty much history. I didn't know what was going to happen. Didn't think I was going to stay out there for 4 years, but I did, and it was one of the best experiences that I have ever had. So yeah, pretty awesome.
all right, Cami, are you driving or what do you do? I'm getting nervous. I see like the motion and I'm like, okay, do we need to?
I'm good. I'm good. I just had some rehab on my back, and so I was like, I got to get back. But Paloma, she told me I could get on my phone, so it was fine. I'm using two hands. I'm good. I swear.
Okay, so you don't have to look at us. We can hear you. You just look at the road and just conversate with us.
Okay, sounds good.
If you
And I
wanna,
guess I'll go
go
next.
ahead and yeah.
Cool. So, I went to UC Irvine. I actually went for 3 years. I completed 3 years. I wasn't drafted. So after the draft, I was in this phase where I didn't know if I really wanted to play soccer anymore. Do I continue? Do I quit? Do I move on with my life? And I had like a really good heart to heart with my dad. He was like, I mean, if this is what you want to do, then go for it. And they were all for supporting me. So they actually paid for me to go to every single open tryout. They paid for my flights. They paid for the open tryout. The first open tryout happened to be the Houston Dash. I showed up and there was like 60 girls or something. And I was approached by this tall, dark, and handsome man who looked very Hawaiian, and his name is Brian Ching. And I had no clue who he was. I was like, who is this guy? He was like, hey, Cami would like you to come back for preseason. And I was like,
Oh.
Oh no, Cami. She was getting to the good part, the handsome guy. She cuts off. But I guess while she gets connected, Bri, if you want to go ahead and take the spot.
Yeah, sure. I have a similar story to Satara. I went to Pepperdine, and then following my time at Pepperdine, there she is. Should we give it back?
Okay, so let's break. You want to do a quick break and go back to Cami's story? We'll be back, Bri. Breaking news, Cami.
sorry. Okay. So yeah, Brian King, he was like, hey, we want you to come into preseason. And I was like, okay, when's preseason? He was like, 2 weeks. I was like, 2 weeks? I'm still in school. I don't really have my life figured out at that point. So it was a lot at one time. So I came in as an amateur player, and I think I started and played in 8 games as an amateur. And then the following season, Randy asked me if I wanted to sign. And so now I've been with the Houston Dash for 6 years and still here. Love it.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Bri. Again, cut 2.
Yeah, so I went over to England and then had 2 seasons over there. I actually got to play against Sadie. So shout out to Sadie. Got to play against her when she played at Liverpool. And then joined the Dash, I guess, mid-pandemic. And then here we are today. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, Danny, you're next.
All right. So when I went to school, I'm a little bit older than everybody else here, but there wasn't really a lot of women's soccer, and women's soccer was literally just developing at A&M and Texas and the schools around here. But we actually had a women's team then. Fast forward, I had a daughter, got involved. She was playing and very involved in the game, and that reminded me in really 15 years, nothing changed in women's soccer. It was stale, stagnant. There's still college programs, but there's still nothing besides college programs. So I got involved in the semi-pro side of the game. And as it has grown, then we've also realized the need to provide opportunities for players, not just for college players who already have the opportunity, but players after college to have the opportunity to keep playing. And so that's kind of where we are with FC Austin Elite.
Amazing. So I kind of want to go back to a little bit of what Cami said, and I mean all 3 of you girls, and even Danny, of the doubt of maybe saying, is this for me, or should I continue to go about and become a professional soccer player? Because as we all know, there's different factors as of why should I leave this as a hobby, or why should I pursue it. And one of the one that weighs a lot is obviously the economic side of things, that we all know that female athletes, especially in soccer, do not get paid the same as the male counterparts. So I mean, I kind of want to touch on that. And what are your thoughts on all that? I want to make you guys raise your hands if somebody doesn't start talking passionately. Okay, so I get Bri, yeah, good job, you.
Okay. Yeah, I think one of the more important things moving forward is not only the investment from clubs, but more so the audience and the broadcasting, that hopefully we can secure those type of rights, because I think the type of football that we play is really great, and there's no excuse for not wanting to watch it, because it is good football. But it's a matter of actually having the ability to easily watch us play. I remember I just had to stream, for instance, the FAWSL Man City versus Man United derby, and that should be easily on any type of channel. I mean, we stream sports here, or we broadcast sports here like crazy, and the fact that women's coverage gets minimal is shocking, and it's also part of the problem. So I think that's the biggest step, in my opinion, to attacking this type of, I guess, wage gap or inequality, is getting that viewership and that backing to say we are watchable, and that's what people want to see. So that for me is where we need to start collectively.
And it's kind of like a circle of, I call it like the bad circle cycle, I guess, because a lot of the times, even if the media coverage is there, the marketing's not there. So the players doesn't get, they don't get exposed. And if they don't get exposed, they don't get, sponsorships. And they don't get sponsorships, they can't, have better training or have better, equipment or have better treatment whenever they do get injured and things like that. So it's kind of like a circle that doesn't have like a way to kind of break through. So that's why it's one of the things that, like Bri was mentioning, it's very hard to decide, or like the coverage as well. So, I mean, Danny, in your standpoint, you see women trying to break through and make it professionally, not wanting to let go of the dream or trying to find a connection to still becoming a professional, or stepping it up a notch more than a hobby.
Yeah, I think that's one thing. That was actually what I was going to add, is the other thing that really hurts women. There's thousands of spots to play in college and only like literally 250 spots to play professionally in the United States right now. So as a player coming out of college, you have a really narrow opportunity. And until we increase those number of opportunities, increase the ability to play there, and do it responsibly, where players are not necessarily making millions of dollars, but aren't, like Satara said earlier, where they're able to live and get by and still chase the dream is very important. And the more opportunities that we can give to players, then the better it is, and the more people might decide that's a path they want to go down, as opposed to, no, I'm done at college, this is as good as it gets, I'm out. And at that point, they haven't even hit their athletic peak. Like, they're still babies athletically. And so I think that helps. And definitely that being seen more, women's sports being seen more, to Bri's point, really helps too, because the more you see it, the more you're like, oh, I want more of that. This game is awesome. Anytime we can get a fan in the stands and they watch us play, they're like, oh, this is like just like the soccer I see on TV. This is really good soccer, and maybe even better than the men's soccer. I want more of this.
Yeah. So Satara and me were talking off camera before, we went live, and we were talking about how, the NWSL had changed from not paying the soccer players year around, not paying them year round, to paying them year round. We were kind of joking and saying if home wasn't being paid, then it would be very difficult for, a player to be able to pay everything in that one salary. So I kind of want Satara to give us a little bit of her experience of what she had to do before she was being paid year round.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is like saving. Like, the minute you get your paycheck, it's just saving majority of it, because in my instance, I have like my car to pay for, which is not cheap at all, So I think the biggest thing with that is just saving. But we shouldn't. This is going to sound crazy, but like when you compare it to the men, like these men, like especially like when I was playing in Liverpool, these men were getting paid like 400, 500,000 pounds like a week, and the fact that they can just do that and just mosey on and keep it pushing, to me it's crazy to think about that, because here it is, my little paycheck that I get paid once every month. It's I'm having to save half of it for my car. And it's crazy to think that if we didn't have like our housing to be that wasn't paid for, or we didn't have certain things paid for us, and we wouldn't be able to survive. It's just simple as that. But I think as time goes on, I think especially in the NWSL, you see like the minimum wage is starting to go up, the maximum is starting to go up. It's getting better little by little, but we still have a really long way to go, as a sport in general for the women's side. There shouldn't be a conversation. Like, I feel like it's crazy to still have this conversation in 2021, where we're talking about like we're still struggling, as female athletes. This has been a conversation from like the get go. It's crazy to think that we're still having this now, but there is progress, and that's the good thing about it, that we are seeing some progress in it, and it is getting better. There are people, fixing their eyes on women's soccer. And bouncing back to what Bri was saying with like viewership, Bri, I know you were saying that you were struggling, catching the City and United game. There is actually a new, I don't know if it's like really a streaming service, but it's called Atta Football, and basically what they do, I think they like buy like the club's like ownership or whatever. I don't know what it's called, or however they do it, and they sell it back to like NBC Sports for like free. And basically, I was able to watch like City and United play today on NBC Sports. So I think having people do that is really helping get people's eyes on, on the women's game. And obviously, as we get more fans, we'll have, as soon as COVID decides to like let up, whenever that is, get more people in the stands, revenue goes up, paychecks go up. It's like a domino effect. But like I said, it is kind of crazy to still have this conversation in 2021 about how we're still getting paid pennies when we should be getting paid just as much as the men. I see why the U.S. women's national team continues to keep fighting for equal pay, because I mean, we're we're good at what we do. We should get compensated, in the right way. So it's as simple as that.
Yeah, and bouncing off to what you actually just said, that was one of my questions. Knowing that the U.S. women's team, took it to court, lost in court, about not being paid the same as the men. Knowing that the women have actually won championships and the men haven't even gotten close,
Right.
yet the money,
Right.
change is very different, and it's kind of like, from fans, even little girls. Sometimes my cousins have asked me, and they're like, okay, so if the women have won so many times and they're doing everything right, why are the men that can't even make it, any important level close to being in the final, get paid way more than that? So it's something very difficult to kind of explain to little girls, or even to other women, and to men, because sometimes men, I'm like, I don't get it. I'm like, yeah, I don't get it either. So that's kind of one of the things that I wanted to also ask on that. Like, what do you think, as players and as a manager, Danny, what do you think, and it's a broad question, what do you think that society needs to do to help women in soccer get paid the same amount as men? Cami, you wanna, or Danny? Okay.
That's and Cami, please, because I don't think I have a good answer for that. But it's a hard question, because if we just raised everybody's pay, there already are limited opportunities. That's why, honestly, that's probably why women don't get paid as much as men in soccer, because there are thousands of men's opportunities in the US right now and only hundreds of women. If people really had to start competing, by people, I mean companies, teams had to start competing for players to come play for them, like they do in the Premier League. You really have to compete for players in the Premier League. So you pay them millions of dollars. And if we can increase the competition for players, I think we ultimately start seeing an increase in salary for players, because if I want to be the best team in the world, I want to have the best players. So I'm going to have to pay those people to come play for me. And I think right now that's why we see a lot of players going to the big leagues in Europe, the Frances and the Englands, to play on the women's side, because those teams do have the competition and they do get the revenue and they do have the money to actually support those contracts. So it couldn't hurt, but I'm open to any ideas.
Cami, do you have any input into?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes off what Bri was saying about viewership. As of right now, majority of the people who come and actually watch the Houston Dash or other NWSL teams are youth soccer players, and I think we've continually gone that route with youth soccer, and I think it might be a bit diluted at this point. The people who you're going to get coming back over and over and over again are the diehard fans who are in the fan groups, waving the flags. It's more of an atmosphere. And as of right now, the NWSL doesn't really have a desirable atmosphere at games. So I think the next step would be maybe going in and maybe going to bars and like, hey, come support the Houston Dash. That way we have more of like a lively crowd. You still need the youth soccer players, that's for sure. You still need that crowd as well. But it's a combination of a whole bunch of different types of people.
So do you think that now, with like the Houston Dash and the Dynamo did a rebranding and all those things, and the Dash actually went down to Mexico to kind of see what Tigres from Liga MX was doing with Tigres, the women's team, and they kind of got ideas from that and stuff like that. Do you think that it helps out to have like the backup of the male players from the Houston Dynamo, or any team actually?
Oh, absolutely.
So I have something to say.
Oh, Bri, sorry, I forgot the hand thing.
Sorry. I think it's really hard to compare U.S. soccer league, the NWSL in general, to European or Mexican football clubs, purely because those clubs have, in general, a fan base of many, many years. Whereas the MLS is still a young league. And if you look at the rebrand, they tried to incorporate the Houston Dash into the Houston Dynamo side, but it's not exactly the same. So when you go to watch a Chelsea women's game, you're going to watch Chelsea the club. You're not necessarily seeing Chelsea women's. It's not a separate entity. So while I think that the issue would be easily addressed by like trying to market it and what have you, I also think that it's difficult because our market for sports is also vast. We have football, baseball, basketball. In Europe, it's netball, football, cricket, like rugby, but the primary one would be football. So it's incredibly hard because we're not only splitting viewership, but like I'm pretty sure I saw a statistic on one of the Instagram pages talking about women's sports coverage, and it still is only like 4%, which is, it's insane. So that's where I think we need to start asking and demanding from ESPN, from CBS Sports, from NBC for the same equal coverage. It shouldn't just be, oh, occasionally we put a women's game on. It should be easy to access. And again, I think it's incredibly difficult. The fact that I have to go through NBCSN Sports app to try to find the game versus it just being on a channel is insane. Like, also, I'd love to go. I go to a Chelsea supporter group here in Houston, and I get to watch the Chelsea game every Sunday. And that's a community, but I get to go to a bar and watch it. I don't have to try to find it on my computer at home. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like the accessibility
It does
of
make
it
sense,
is,
yeah. Because even watching the Dash,
is
whenever you guys were in the bubble, it was really hard as a reporter or even interested in soccer to be able to watch the games in a fluid way. So it makes total sense to what you're saying. It's something that it makes sense that needs to change for it to be more, I guess, easily there. So even if you're accidentally change into a Dash game or change into another NWSL team, you kind of get interested because it's like, hey, I want to watch soccer. Cool, they're playing. Let me just watch it. And that's how a lot of things happen. Fans get interested in the game, and then they start following you. So, and like bouncing off of what Cami said, yeah, there needs to be more of an ambient because, in like what Bri said, yeah, the teams you can't compare to the Liga MX or to any of the leagues in South America because they're older teams and they've been there for years, and it's one of the the sports that is king. There's really no other sports that compete with it. But the thing is that here in Houston, I know that Houston is very much considered a very soccer football city. They're even in the trying to make one of the World Cup games be here. So it's something that's very live and it's very prominent here in Houston. So I think that maybe, yes, it's not the same thing with the Dynamo, but they're trying to kind of make it, when you think of the Dash, you think of the Dynamo, or if you think of the Dynamo, you think of the Dash, which is something that other teams like Tigres, the women have had, I guess, positive feedback. And I think that's something that the Dynamo was trying to kind of do with the team itself here. I know, Satara, you played overseas as well. What do you think of like the backup of a team?
Yeah, I think Bree really hits on the head with some really good points in regards to it. Definitely is a completely different dynamic out in Europe. I've always gotten this question, do I find it important, that the backing of the men's side is really important for the women's side, and I say 100%. Playing for Liverpool, we really didn't have the backing. I don't know how Bree it was for you at West Ham, but for the women's side at Liverpool, we really didn't have much of the backing on the men's side. But if you compared it to like the Man Cities and the Arsenals and the Chelseas, I mean, they definitely have the backing on the men's side. And I always say that in order to bring in talent, you need money. And so you need that money from the men's side trickling down to the women's side in order to go and buy that talent, to be good, to be successful, to draw in a crowd, to draw in a crowd because you have such the big names. When Sam Kerr went over to Chelsea, that was obviously a huge thing because she's Sam Kerr. She's one of the best players in the world. Like, who wouldn't want to see her play on that stage for a club like Chelsea? So I think it is really important. I think it's vital, especially, because as we all know, like the men's side obviously brings in a lot more money than the women's side. If we can have just a portion of that just to put into, kind of building a foundation for the women's side to kind of build off of. It's imperative, but sometimes you never know what these men's sides. So, but yeah, I think it's important, 100%.
Danny.
So I have a question into that, Satara, for anyone. Like, what if instead of relying on men's football to make women's football happen, we just all focused on making women's football happen? And because clearly men's football, by and large, is not interested in investing in women's football. They show it over and over and over again, especially here in the United States. And sometimes people get their arm twisted in Mexico and they have to do it, or they get their arm twisted in Europe and they have to do it. But short of the Thorns and Timbers, which even with that, if you look at the stadium, everything's green, nothing's red. Even the women's marketing they do, a lot of it is green, not red. But they do a good job. I mean, they do the best job of anybody. I somewhere in the back of my head, I hope that if we just say, we're going to stop relying on men to do the right thing and make women's football happen, we come together as women's football and say, we're going to do this, and we're going to get more fans in the stands, and we're going to make this more important, and we're going to start writing, or demanding of NBC or Fox Sports, or like, there's only so many football games I can watch from 10 years ago. Like, why not put a women's soccer game on instead, and start demanding that for women's sports? Hopefully we can get somewhere with it. And I know that's something that we only do women's soccer. We don't do men's soccer because I don't want, the focus really should be on women's soccer. Let's 100% into women's soccer and quit asking a man for permission to make women's soccer be important and start making women's soccer important instead. I don't know how we do it 100%, but I'd love to see the shift, because I know right now in Austin, people want to see women's soccer. People want equality for sports, and they don't just want that, like, they don't just want it in equal pay, like, okay, what are men doing? Let's do that too. They want it true equality, where, like you have at Chelsea, you have the Chelsea men's team and the Chelsea women's team. That's equality. Having the Pachuca team and the Pachuca women's team, that's not really equality. It's got to, so I'd love to see us start to change the dynamic and demand that equality that it really should be. It should be the Houston men's team and the Houston women's team. At least, at minimum, it should be that, not the, go to the Houston Dash page right now. I don't think it's houstondash.com. I think it's houstondynamo.com/dash. Like, we need to have that equality in there to say the women are as important as the men, and that starts today.
So you're basically saying that instead of helping being backed up by a men's team, you think it's doing damage to the women's game?
I personally do. I think that women's soccer, I think the women's game is being held back, waiting for men to care about women's men's sports, not men in general, but like that we want the NFL to back the NWSL. It's not going to happen. We're waiting for, we're waiting for government. It's not going to pick up.
Bri, what's your take on that, Bri?
I think it's hard because, like, Chelsea is one club, and that's why they're successful. There's no separation really. So I kind of disagree in the sense, because I think if you market it as the Houston team, the Houston soccer team, like, this is Soccer City, like you're saying, then it's like, who cares if it's man or woman? We're just going to the game. Like, it doesn't matter. It's the club that everybody is getting behind. So I think that's also that's why you can't really compare the English league to the American league, because they're very different in how they structure it. So, and I don't know about the Tigres situation, but I assume that the women's Tigres team is the same name as the men.
Yes.
And that's why they're very successful. So I think if you sell one club, that's a great thing. And I think that's what Houston's trying to do currently. But that's where it's hard to compare it to, like, a Chelsea that's already one club, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So
it makes sense.
We have different leagues as well. And yeah, that's just what I think. I don't know.
So, Cami, what do you think of what Danny's saying? It's an interesting take, and if kind of to make women soccer grow without the men.
I mean, ideally, yeah. Like you said, I mean, it'd be very difficult, and I feel like there's a lot of unanswered questions if we went that route. But since there is such a big following on men's soccer, a lot of women's teams, when they're coming into the league, typically go for the teams that already have a men's counterpart for the money aspect because it is so expensive. Going off of what we were discussing earlier about the rebrand, I personally really enjoy the rebrand for Houston Dynamo and Dash. You are correct that the website is Dynamo, it's not Dash. But I think the men's players are very inclusive. We're all like very good friends with them, and they're very outspoken about women's soccer. So I think the rebrand has kind of molded us to both of the teams together. Maybe not the name or the following, but the teams. So like the men's team and the women's team are better friends, and we support each other more often. Another thing is, I mean, I've been here for 6 years, and it was completely segregated the first year. It was like,
and that's what I was going to ask you that because you've been there for a while, you know the difference.
Yeah, the Dynamo ran the show, and we were the ugly stepchild, for sure. And now we have a locker room, and the first year we were changing outside. So I know that there are large steps in the right direction, and I think it is showing in how we've been playing. I'm not sure if it's because we won and they're like, oh, this is a good time to do it or not, but regardless, like, I feel a difference. I don't know about, I can't speak for other girls on the team, but I feel more confident as a player within the club now than I did 2 years ago.
Satara, do you have any input in that?
With everything in general, it's actually interesting to hear Cami speak about the dynamic, like with the inclusiveness that the inclusion that the Dynamo side is doing with the women's. Because up until when I was there last, June, May, well, obviously with COVID, nobody's interacting with anybody. But even in 2019, when I was there, and I really felt like there really was a disparity between like the men's side and the women's side. And I always felt like, we were always having to, the Dynamo were always being prioritized over the women. But things may have changed, since I've been gone, so I'm not too sure. But to kind of like, to kind of wrap up what everybody is saying, that what Bri was saying in terms of like it being one club, that's what I was trying to get across, is that when you have a men's side and a women's side, it should be like one thing, one club, one team, one dream. I know that sounds corny AF, but that's the point of it. So I think what Bri's hitting on is like it's spot on, that it should be like one group. And you can feel that there is clearly like a disparity between the men's side and the women's side in a lot of clubs, and so I felt it when I was at Liverpool. I guess I didn't really think much about it when I was at Houston, because I felt like just the dynamic in women's soccer in general in America is so different than it is in England. So I guess I didn't really kind of pay too much attention to it. But when I was definitely in England, there was a huge disparity. I mean, there was Liverpool, like the men's side. I mean, like they're the best in Europe. Everybody loves them. And then there's the women, like Cami was saying. When she first got to Houston, and the women's side was like the stepchild. That's exactly how I felt when I was at Liverpool. And I always tell people, oh, like, yeah, I play for Liverpool, and everybody's like, yeah, that's so cool. That must have been awesome. And I think people kind of associate playing for like a club with Liverpool. It's like, oh my God, you'll never walk alone. It's gonna be, it must be awesome. But what people fail to understand, that it really isn't what it's all cracked up to be. We got treated not very well out there, So yeah. So when I say like the backing of the men's side, I just think it should be like one team, like just one group. The men and women are considered equal. Period. That's it.
Yeah. And I want to bounce on what, going back to this, but it's something that I feel as well. just in general, like covering soccer as well. What Danny said, that would be in a perfect world. Like we stand alone, women power, we did it ourselves. But unfortunately, I don't think the game, jumping off what Cami said too, it's a lot of people that, bring their daughters to watch the game, or, hey, let's go watch them. But we need to have some kind of, the players need to have some kind of energy being, bounced off of the men's team to become their equal. And I totally agree with Satara and Bri are saying that it needs to be one team, no matter what. Because if you watch players from afar, you're not going to be able to tell if they're women or men. You're going to see just little legs running around trying to score. So that's, at the end of the day, would be like the goal in life, right? Who cares? Like if everybody shaves their hair off, we're not going to know what is going on. Like we're just going to know it's like human beings on the field playing. And that's like the ultimate goal. Unfortunately, or fortunately, women's team have to feed off of the men in some sort to be able to accomplish that equality in the field and in the treatment of women. Like Satara said, yeah, you're in Liverpool and you think like golden stars and everybody's like you're, walking, in golds, because like the men's team is so powerful and so well known that you expect the women to be the same. And that's not the case either in Europe or even in South America. There's a lot of teams that have made women's teams, and sure, they have the same name, sure, they have the same jersey, but the treatment and the quality of not only the payment is not the same. So I would like to agree completely with Danny, but I'm leaning towards more Bri's side that we're not there yet. Danny.
Yeah, actually, I think in hearing Bri talk, I think that her point is very valid, and I think that maybe the way I said it was wrong. I'm thinking more about the growth of the game, like Angel City. I would rather see Angel City come in than LAFC women. If we wait for the growth of the game to happen because of men's soccer, that'll be tough. But 100%. In where we are now with the Dash, with the Thorns, with any of our women's teams that do have male counterparts, 100%. The closer those teams can be, the more success they're going to have on both sides, men and women's side. Because when you can have that good synergy, like Cami said, where the men are backing up the women and the women are backing up the men, you see it in college programs all the time too. When the programs are closer together, that works out better for everybody. And I agree 100% with that. Like that's how those teams are going to succeed. That's how the Dash is going to succeed, by having good backing from the Dynamo and being tight with them. Women's soccer in general, I would hate to see, for instance, like a San Antonio not get professional women's soccer because they don't have an MLS team. Like I'd love to see women invest, or people invest in women's soccer in San Antonio, which is a vibrant market, or anywhere, Kansas City. I love to see that Kansas City got women's soccer back, not because the MLS team wanted it, but because the people wanted it. And I think that's where we're really going to see excitement in the women's game, is when we do have things outside of men's soccer also be involved. So.
And that's why I think it's good to have these conversations, because everybody has so many different backgrounds and different opinions and different like life experiences. And Danny's mind was like in a manager's sense of point. And then Bri's and Satara's and Cami's, it's like, hey, I'm a player and this is what I've lived and what I've experienced. Bri.
Yeah, I think adding off of what Danny said, and I think you're hitting it like again. It has to be invested in, and it's almost a catch-22, because you need the investment to come to then sell something. But I also firmly believe, again, it's about viewership and about being able to have a platform to sell it to multiple people in the market. And that's why I think, like you're saying, San Antonio should have a women's team. Yeah, they should have a women's team because that's the city. They get behind their team, right? It's the same thing with Houston. It doesn't matter if it's Dash or Dynamo. They're getting behind it because it's their city. So that's where, like, again, I think it has to come back to viewership for women's sport, because that's where you're going to be able to actually sell your product to an audience. And that's where I was saying, I think one club should be just one city, for instance, and not necessarily like one or the other, so to speak. Because then again, like I said, people are just getting behind it because that's their city. That's who they throw down for. That's who they hold it down for. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
I mean, Yeah, that's just what I think. But again, like I said, I think we need to start demanding the bigger networks coverage. It's absolutely mind-boggling that that's like not a bare minimum. And that has to be it. I think that's the way forward for us because that's where you'll find investment. That's where you have return on your investment because that's where you sell,
Yeah.
sponsorships in the background on the field where they have, their logo. So, yeah, I think it's a catch-22 sometimes, but I also think viewership is definitely something we need to demand, like first and foremost.
And going back to a little bit of what Cami said, that it has kind of changed, and I've seen it in the perspective, of course, being an outsider, of when the Dash started into the evolution of how the players are treated now compared to the Dynamo. Dynamo used to be like, number one, main I guess focus, and now it's shifted. Like the Dash is also almost like the equal in some areas, I would say. But I think there's a lot of growth as well, and it involves also, like Bree said, it has to be more availability so people can actually watch the game whenever they want. They don't have to jump through hoops and all that. So I guess kind of going to what we were saying, like the differences between the US and, let's say, the Europe League. What do you think the US has to learn from the European League, or what are the, growing pains that the league has to go through to be better for women?
Satara, do you want to go first?
Uh, yeah, I'm over here just trying to think because I'm like, I haven't been there in like I said forever. I would say it's crazy though because you asked it, but I also think that like I feel like to an extent I feel like I had more. I don't even know what's the word I'm looking for. Not like freedom, but I felt like when I came back to the NWSL, it was like almost like a breath of fresh air in regards to. I felt like the Dash, like there was like a lot of organization, things were getting done. But if we're looking at it from like an overall perspective on like what perhaps the NWSL could learn from like let's say the FAWSL, it definitely is just getting that backing from like the MLS side, if there is an MLS side, which I presume all the teams in the NWSL have like MLS side. So just kind of having like that relationship, having that association with them, and getting that backing, and kind of forming like one club with the MLS side, because that I think that partnership, that unity can work wonders for the women's game tremendously. Because when a supporter is supporting a club, they're not just a lot of them are supporting the club in general. They'll support both the men's side, the women's side, the academy, whatever the case may be. You're supporting one club. So I guess that would probably be like the only take I would say that the NWSL could do to help it kind of improve more drastically. And since I've been gone, like the FAWSL has like improved so much with like getting games seen in the United States. Like my mom, she's so pissed because like when I was over there, she could never watch me play, like ever, ever. It was like every once in a blue moon she'll get a chance to watch me play through like LFC TV. But now, I've been back for what 3 years now, 2 years now, and the FAW, like the FA in general, has made it more accessible for people overseas to watch games. So I think the NWSL has done that, has allowed with having games on Twitch, which allows like overseas viewers to watch the games. I think they've kind of started that train in motion, so it is really good. But yeah, that would be the only take away from that for sure.
Bree?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear your experience, Satara, because at West Ham and Birmingham, obviously it was like kind of separate but equal. Obviously not equal pay. Let me just back that up. But we had access to like a lot of the facilities, obviously. And I think my first season, Satara's last season, was the first time that the club was, or the league itself was full-time professional, meaning you didn't have to work a secondary job. And so that was a huge step and monumental, in my opinion, to that league getting off the ground. And then following that, the Barclays that sponsors the Premier League came in and sponsored the Women's League as well. And that's the Barclays FA player app. So that's where, again, accessibility to the games and the players as fans is so much more seamless because it's streamlined even through an app. I don't know if we have an NWSL app I really genuinely don't know, so I can't compare it. But like I could stream a game whenever I wanted. So like in the Challenge Cup, I was still watching games that were being played in England because it was on the app. So again, I think like Satara is saying, it's interesting because that dynamic is sold as one club, but I didn't know that they were struggling Liverpool women behind the scenes, because on social media it looks like you guys are pretty well backed by the men's side, but in reality you don't know the struggles in terms
It's
of
deceiving.
facilities.
It's deceiving.
Exactly. So yeah, I just find it interesting because I actually knew a lot of people that wanted to play for Liverpool and they thought it was the neatest thing that I got to play against teams like that when I came back to the States. But then to hear her experience is kind of shocking. So, yeah, it's interesting. But obviously, that being said, and this is one thing I keep meaning to bring up, is that the women, in order to be full time in the Super League, you had to prove that you were self sustainable. So in the case that the men's team got relegated, you wouldn't be cut as a women's program. So you had to have a financial model and infrastructure to prove that regardless of the men's side, you were going to be able to survive. So that to me is the coolest thing, because obviously it would be horrific if you then went and then got a team going and then the men's side got relegated, and then it was like, okay, well, how do we cut costs? We're cutting the women. So
Yeah.
I think that's also something for us in the US to maybe embrace. I'm not exactly sure about the financials here though, so can't speak on that at all, really.
So, I mean, financials is something that's been brought up several times, and I want to hear like Danny's perspective of like when you get to train and be with women that want to go professionally. What do you tell them? How do you tell them, hey, you might have to work two jobs, or like you're not going to be making Ronaldo money or Messi money?
That's the hardest part, because we get these like bright-eyed bushy-tailed like 18, 19-year-olds, and they think they're going to play through college and that they're going to get this job, and like crushing people's dreams is not my favorite thing to do. But the reality, if you want to be a professional women's soccer player, like you're not going to make the money. Like that's not where your money's going to come from, and you really have to want to do it. And for most women, like you're blessed to get to go to England to play, or to play in the United States. You're going to countries that don't speak English. And if they do speak English, they're not going to speak English to you just kind of out of spite, because they know you can't speak their language. A lot of our players have gone to Iceland and Israel and Portugal and Spain to play. And that's a tough road to do. And even when you get there, you still don't make any money. You basically get a vacation paid for, and you get to play some soccer. And that's a tough spot. And I think that's why, fortunately, we in America, we're blessed, and that the amount of money it would take to invest in a program like they're running in Portugal or Spain or Israel, it's not that much money. And we could do that here in the United States if people wanted to. So we need to make that possible, and we really need to start doing that and building our base here to let that be an option. If you want to go to England or Germany or Norway or Sweden to play, that's awesome. I want people to be able to do that. But the financial reality is women don't make that much money playing soccer. So why don't we have more women's soccer? It's not an expensive business to get into.
So I know that Satara and Bri also, you guys mentioned, and I know in past interview that you had to at some point have like a second job to kind of help, sustain yourself. How hard is it to be a professional athlete, but yet you have to be a referee in the weekend or teach, little league or something like that?
Yeah, it's I mean, Cami could probably hit on this a little bit more, because I know
Cami,
she does
come
some things on this on the side. Cami does some things on the side. But I'll just briefly say that I didn't really have to do that during the season. It was more so like after the season. But you're still like trying to maintain staying in shape for the off season. You're trying to figure out how to balance it all. offering yourself to so many different things, staying in shape, working out, getting, touches on the ball while still working. Sometimes it's hard to balance it all out, but you figure it out. That's what we do as athletes. We're built, we're built for this stuff. So, no matter how you try to twist it and turn it, we somehow, some way kind of get through it. So, yeah.
Cami, any?
Okay, I'll add a
I saw you
little
do your head back. I'm okay.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, like if you're talking to an 18-year-old and they're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, do it. The best advice is like, if you want to do it, go for it, but it's gonna be a grind. Like no matter what route you go, it's gonna be tough. There's gonna be times where you're like, did I really choose this career? I chose this career path. So like you have to try to figure it out on your own. And a lot of the girls do things on the side. I'm a coach on the side, and it's a lot. All day, got yourself first because soccer comes first. Honestly, it's tough to maintain your health and wellness doing both. It's been my biggest struggle because you have limited time in the day. You also have to be able to pay your rent, but soccer doesn't pay your rent. I get paid more at my other job, but soccer is still a priority. So you kind of have to balance between the two. For me, it's nice that my job isn't Dash. They know that Dash is priority, but I know a lot of other people case, and so a lot of their jobs or lose whatever their opportunity. And mine is okay. Say we're soccer, we're done playing soccer. We're 10 years behind everybody else who has already started internships or have real experience at a job for 5 years. When you're going into an interview, they're like, your experience, like, I played for 7 years. Cool. So, like, did you do in real world? Like, I played soccer. Did you not hear me? When you have to start back at square zero and then build yourself back in order to prepare yourself for the rest of your life. And I think we've actually given a lot of really good opportunity to bridge that gap. Sorry. In order to bridge that gap. And I know Satara was one of the people that really in those situations, because that gap can get real wide if you don't pay attention to it.
Okay. Well, guys, it's almost time. I know time flies by when you're talking about something that, needs a solution, but we're going to get there. It's like we're going in circles, but, something will come out of this discussion to make women's soccer grow. And I don't want to end in a negative note saying if you're not going to make it as a soccer player, maybe you will. Maybe by the time you guys that are watching your daughters or something, the money will be better. You won't have to be a dog walker at the same time or, coach kids and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's the dream, right? That's the dream, to have women win the same amount as men, because we've shown, as the Dash just showed, that they could bring a championship home. So that's something it's there. So it's another reason to say, hey, watch the women's play. And that's something that bothers me, because I've had people ask me, oh, why should I watch women? And I'm just like, because it's soccer. So hopefully in the near future, it's just something that you say, just tune in here. It's on NBC, it's in ESPN, just watch it. No more questions, just watch. So, I want to, thank you guys for being part of the panel, for joining us today. And for those of you who tuned in, don't forget to go visit the Striker Texas. There's also forums that you can comment, you can write. And if this is something that is passionate to you as well, you can comment on it with other people there as well. So I don't want you to tune out yet. There's more coming. The 2021 Texas Soccer Summit continues with the Striker Texas managing editor, Joanna Gretzel, on the discussion, again, of growing women's professional leagues in Texas and throughout the United States. Thank you once again for watching. And my name is Laura Gomez.